All right, guys, so this is gonna be the video on how to start applying the first layer on the actual animal. Remember, we're gonna be breaking it up into two separate layers. I am going to put one coat that's gonna be the bottom coats, and then of course, it's the redefining of the contours, redefining of some of the highlights. That'll be the last video that we're going to be showing you guys, okay, at the very end. Now, right now I have it backed away. I will zoom in on certain areas when we start getting to that, when I start talking about each individual color of how to approach and so forth. But right now I have it zoomed out just because we do need to double check on colors and what we're going to be using for colors. So Lily, at least my dog, and let me just answer this real quick. I'm going to 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Last name Charles? No, not in the painting class. I don't see him registered. So as far as the, let me just double check that one more time. Okay, yeah, no, he's not on here. So as far as the information, like when it comes to this here, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and double check that. I'm gonna go over the black part first. So anybody who's working with black, just make sure that you can follow the same technique. If you're not working with black, then you'd be swapping out colors as far as like what's going to be the main color, what's going to be the highlights, what's going to be the shadows. Okay, so I do need to, and I'm going to switch to this. This is the one I'm going to be using first as far as size of brush. You can see that there, just because I am going to want to add different types of colors when it comes to the highlights. And if I'm going to be doing different kinds of colors, I'll probably add like maybe 2. And usually with black, just because they're darker tones, I would think of using either, you could either use a green, a blue, or a purple because they're the cool colors. I think just by looking at this, I see more of the blue tones. So I know I want to use blue. And I think I'm going to use purple just because I'm a fan of that color just to begin with. So I wouldn't mind. I think the combination of blue and purple is just a good color to work with just in general. Okay, so I do need to mix a purple because I don't have a purple. So I'm gonna make sure that I put more blue right off the bat. So these are things that you guys should be doing. So just grab your colors, whichever color you're gonna work with first in whichever area. Again, if you're not 100% sure and you just wanna watch as I do this, and then when I stop the video, you guys can also ask, and at least that way, since you already know how to do it, you can ask your questions and then you should be able to start, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and put here with the red. And at this point, what I'm gonna end up doing is again, mixing the purple first. So I'm gonna get a separate brush, the one that I'm not gonna use for the painting, just so I can use to scoot the colors in. So I'm gonna start with the blue and I'm just gonna put some blue over here off to the side. So I kind of do have like a half and half there. And I'm gonna clean my brush with my napkin first. Let me get this real quick. Getting a little bit of water, but I want to make sure my brush is clean and I don't want to do it only with a napkin. Okay, so please make sure that, especially if you're going into another color, that you wash it properly, because you can see just by removing it and then putting it into the water, it comes off completely. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and get some of my red and place it over here first. That's about half. And then I can go ahead and just scoot it into the blue. Now for me looking at it, it looks a little bit brown. So that just tells me that I need a little bit more blue. But before I grab the blue, I need to make sure that I clean my brush very well. Otherwise, I'm going to stain my blue. So then I'll get a little bit more of the blue. And I'm going to mix it right here just on the edge till I get to the purple that I want. I don't have to mix it with all of it. And this is more or less the purple that I'm looking for. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm gonna clean my brush one more time just to make sure that it is 100% clean, because I'm not gonna use it anymore. And if you let the brushes just sit like that, guys, you will mess up your brushes. So make sure you clean it properly once you're done with that. Okay, I'm gonna be scooting over and I'm gonna be using this size of brush, okay? So now that I have for sure the blue and purple that I know I'm gonna wanna use for my highlights within the black, because the black itself is gonna be the shadowed part, okay? Now I'm gonna leave my picture of Lily right here. I am gonna zoom in so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Refocus it. And now that I have that, I'm gonna be working first on this area of Lily. So this is the spot that I'm working with here, okay? So I know that the lighting is not that great when it comes to seeing what I'm doing here on screen. You can see it very, very light, but technically, like I said, your lines should have been light in the first place. So as I'm painting it, you'll see the way that I'm actually applying it. If anything, maybe I can move it up slightly so you can see it just a little bit better without the glare as I'm starting it. And then from there, I'll drop it back down, okay? But basically what you do, you look at the areas that you have of black. So if you guys were working with a completely different color tone, let's say your animal is brown, or let's say your animal is just a complete different color, then you'd still look at it and say, where's the actual color tone? So this is my brown. The highlights is the actual color that you're picking. So in this case, I picked blue and purple to be those particular references. So I'm gonna start with blue. And what I'm gonna end up doing is trying to look at where the highlights are. This is the very lightest point of my highlight. So which is kind of like right here where the little eyebrow looking area is. So I'm gonna start by applying the blue here first. And I'm just gonna kind of draw almost like little stripes, kind of going in this direction, just because if I look at the movement of the fur, that's the way that I see it. It kind of goes with a side stroke. So it kind of does this, a little bit of a curve. So that's what I'm doing first. So you're applying it to the way that the fur moves, okay? And most of the animals that I saw that people picked did have fur. Even Irene, how you had your pig and so forth, they still have that little tiny fur. So you're gonna be doing smaller brush strokes, but you just kind of go more or less of what you see within the picture. I also see that same highlight color right here on the eye. So what I'm gonna end up doing is applying also some going in this direction, because this is the way the movement of the fur is. So I'm gonna put a little bit layer here. And then I'm gonna put another layer right here, because I also see a highlight right here under the eye. I need to put just a little bit more. Now remember that we're gonna be doing layers. So as you're applying the color, this is the darkest of my color. I'm gonna go back and I will do a light blue for highlights in those little furred areas. But we're doing this strokes by stroke when it comes to, especially because we're working with furry animals. I think every single person that applied that reference photo, they were all an animal that had fur. Okay, I didn't see anything that was like reptile or things like that. Not that I remember. So if I'm wrong, correct me. But you see there's a highlight right here. So I need to make sure that I apply some of that blue here. I do see a little bit over here on this side. So I'm gonna apply just a couple of strokes. I'm not gonna connect it because there is like a little bit of a shadow there, which is gonna be my purple. So again, I'm applying the blue on the brightest of the highlight part of where the black is. So I also see some highlight over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply that blue here, in the direction that I see the movement over here of the hair. And then also, since I'm gonna work with all the black as of right now. So wherever I see that bright highlight on the black, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna apply in those spots. So now when I get to here, the fur starts moving in this direction. So now I'm gonna start going like this with my strokes like that. And then this part is super dark, but then there's highlight over here towards the back. So I need to make sure that I incorporate also going this way. This is where my area for the little eyebrow is, so I need to stay away from that. So I'm just going to keep working those strokes, making sure that I put multiple layers. So I'll have to go back and add another layer of this in the same direction that I was applying the stroke. So I got to go like this, put another layer here, here, and follow the direction that you originally applied. Now, if I look at the black that's over here, there's some highlight, a little bit right here. It's hard for you guys to see, but I see it here on my screen. So I'll apply a few here. Maybe just a few here. And then I'm also gonna go ahead and apply wherever I see highlighted in this area. This part of the nose, it starts with a mix. So there's brown and white going into it. So I'm only gonna put just a few little strokes right here on this part of the nose, just a little tiny bit. And then this area of the nose that's highlighted, this top part, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna apply some of the blue here. Most of this is gonna be light blue in the end, but I do wanna apply a little bit of dark blue wherever that highlight of the black is. I'm just gonna, this one doesn't have necessarily the stroke of the pattern. So if you're dealing with like a reptile that has more muted skin like this that he has, it's just more like pointillism. So I'm just gonna go in and tap it because I don't want the same texture as the fur. This fur starts going up, so I do need to add a little bit of highlight here where the black is. And then there's a little bit of highlight right here on the bottom of the nostril. So if you see highlights, no matter what for that black, then you're just gonna apply the blue in those spots, whether it's tapping or whether it's using the stroke. She does have a little bit on her ear too. So I have to follow the highlight that I see because you can kind of see it right here. There's a little bit of highlight. So I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna apply just a tiny bit where I see it, which she only has a little bit of highlight in this spot here. And this one kind of goes like this. So I'm just gonna add a few little strokes. So curved and then curved out. So now that I have the areas where the highlights are, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna clean my brush fully. I just got paint on me, so hold on, because I have to clean it off, otherwise I'll make a mess of it. Okay, so at this point, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and I'm going to remove the excess paint. If you wanna clean it all the way 100%, you can do so, that's fine. But I know I'm gonna go into that purple, so I'm just gonna mix whatever I do have on it in there. And it should be fine, just because I know it's close to the color, okay? So my purple, so that's why I'm saying pick two colors that are at least close to each other, because for me, this purple looks darker than the blue. That's why I'm using it as my mid-tone. So wherever I see the areas on the in-between, remember, you can use your pinky if your pinky is clean, of course. Make sure that it's clean, and I'm gonna put my pinky to rest it here, so that way as I go here, I'm not resting my whole hand on the wet paint that's over here. So if you have to use it as a prop to prop up your finger, you can do that. So what I'll end up doing is on these areas where I see some of the blue start to do the shadow technique on there, I'm gonna use the purple to go in between where I see those areas, and still doing the same technique where you're moving it towards the direction that the fur is moving, okay? So I'm gonna apply some there. Let's see, I can apply a little bit here in between the mid-tone here where I see for the eye, still going out in the same direction. And then I also see some right here. So this is the mid-tone. So I have my black, my purple, and my blue as far as for the tones for the black areas of the pet. Okay, so I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna put some purple in here. Remember to move the direction that you see the fur moving. And then right here, her hair starts doing this. I'm not worried about the eyes just yet, so I'm just gonna avoid that area for right now. And then it starts moving in the opposite direction this way. So I'll take some more purple, and then I'm actually gonna put a little bit around the blue here where I put for the ear. So I'm just gonna put a few strokes going into the blue. So it's almost like a second layer. And then I do see some midtones here, so I'm gonna take a couple of that fur, and this one that comes out this way, I'm gonna first do it with the purple. So I'll put one stroke. I'm not gonna take it too far down because most of that is gonna be with the black. And she has a few strokes just right here that I can say would be this color. I put a few also just here on the top because once I add that black, I can use that as the highlight, and just a little bit on this side. And then I'll follow that same technique, but I'm gonna work my way around. So I'm gonna say, where do I have that midtone? I can probably put a little bit more purple here. For sure, right here where it goes into the black, I'm gonna wanna put some midtone right in between. Because you think about it and you wanna think of it more like transition. So it should transition slightly. So I'm just gonna add a little bit on the edges of the blue. I do have some also right here by where the other eye is. So I want to make sure I incorporate that. Same thing past the highlight here where this part of the eye is. So I'm going to add some purple there. There's a little shadow here right under the eye. So I'll add a little bit of purple there. Right here on this part, it's not solid black. The part that's solid black, I'll be putting some on top of this. So I want to make sure wherever I see mid-tone is where I put purple. And then this one starts going up. So I want to make sure that I put a little bit of this, even though I'm going to be putting black on this spot. If you're not 100% sure where the midtone goes, you can get away with putting some of this midtone on the majority of where the black is. And then you can always go over it with the black if it looks off to you, okay? Same thing right here. She's still got some midtones in here. So I'm going to have to apply some of the purple here. And it starts going up. So I want to make sure that I get the stroke pattern of the way that her fur moves. If you're not moving in the direction of the fur, it's going to look off with your animal, whether you're doing the cat or the dog. Because I know I had a couple of people send me pictures of their cats. So all you're doing is highlight, midtone, shadow. And this is pretty much for anything. If we were working with a drawing, it'd be the same thing. If we were working with sculpture, it's still like as you paint your sculptures, it's still the same idea. And then I'm going to use a little bit of the purple for some of the other highlights that I see here that are not too bright. Like if I zoom in on this, you can kind of see like right here, this is what I would consider midtone. So if we're looking at dark versus highlight versus midtone, that's the color that I'm trying to look for when it comes to Lily herself. So I would go ahead and right above, right here, start this one and kind of do this and put a little bit of the midtone. So that way that the highlight will sit closer to the top and having like highlight here, highlight here. So I'm just going to go in with the purple, put a little bit in here because it's on this side of the nose. And then a little bit going into the nostril right here and a little bit underneath that highlight. If I come to the other side of the nose, all this side of the nose is all midtone. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply purple all here because the rest of it is going to be, the majority is going to be black. So if I want to go back and I want to add some more, like another layer, I would just go back and just follow the same strokes that you originally did in the direction for the fur and just add one more layer on top just so that it looks a little bit more rich in color. So now I'm just going to go and add another layer. And this is just the first layer, guys. After you apply this layer, then you would go ahead and we're going to add like the highlights that sit on top of this. Now, she does have other parts that are black. That's not the only part. There's another black section over here, here, a little bit over here, as well as what's going on here in her mouth. Now, because the gum line is so fine, I'm gonna do that with a whole different brush. I'm not gonna work with that right now, but I am gonna use, since I'm using this brush right now, I'm gonna use it for the other parts of Lily. So I'm gonna come now that I have more or less where that stuff belongs. I'm gonna go ahead and at this point, I'm gonna take my brush and I'm gonna take the purple first since I already have it with the purple. And the majority, if you think about it, this is the major part of the highlight. Like if I try to pay attention to the highlight that's on the black, I don't really see that on these. So if I wanna just stick to the rest being with purple, that's fine. If you like the way the blue looks and you want to add some blue, then so be it. But like I said, at this point with, I'll probably just add a little bit because at this point with how Lily doesn't have a lot of highlight with that, I'm not going to add too much. The majority is going to be more purple. So the rest will just be purple. So there's purple there, and then I'm going to get more purple. Now, she's got this white fur that goes on top. I'm gonna probably, and I'll show you guys a way for those of you guys that are working with the dark colors first of how to prime a little bit over it. So that way it still looks like it's sitting on top. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna try to my best to avoid some of those areas because I kind of already marked them out over here. So I'm just gonna come in with the purple and I'm gonna first concentrate on the contours of those where those fall. So it's like right here, and then right here. So that way I can avoid that area altogether. But if you accidentally get into it, like you start going back and forth and you start applying and then you start getting some of those areas where you're like, oh man, that was supposed to be white. It's okay because I will go ahead and I'll show you guys how to apply the primer on top. So that way you can get those strokes if you accidentally covered all of it, okay? So I'm just gonna continue. Her fur does go in this direction. So I'm just picking up the purple and I'm applying more and then it goes like this over here. So you just follow the stroke pattern, even though you think, well, you don't see a lot of the stroke. Like I don't see Mrs. Palmenes, I don't see like a lot of her, you know, like I can't see it, like it looks like a solid color. It's still going to have a little bit of texture, which will help the eye see it eventually. So I do recommend to still stick to that particular direction. Now, another way, if especially for those of you guys working with fur, instead of going out, like on this case, this hair right here is very fine. You can also go up. So I can take that same stroke and kind of do this and lift my brush and you can get some of those movements as well if you feel like it's not working with you going in this direction, okay? So I'm just gonna put a few more strokes of the purple just because like I said, I know there's a lot more tones down here, and this is what gives her her look in the first place of her fur. So I'm only gonna take it up to here. And then she has a little bit more over here on this surface. So again, with the purple, I'm not gonna put the blue over here. And I do wanna have that look that I did right here. I kind of like the way that looks. So I do wanna go up a little bit. So I'm gonna come first up. I am going to exaggerate, which is fine with pop art. I'm going to exaggerate her fur because I do want to make sure that I cover all of the white. So I'm going to first take a few strokes like this so I can get that white. And then I'm going to take it out. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to try my best to bring out the fur a little bit. So even though it's a little bit longer than what it is in the picture, it'll still look like your animal. Because I don't want that clean, straight edge. I want it to look like fur. So I'm taking it a little bit beyond. And like I said, even if it's a little bit longer than what it is on the actual original picture, it will still look like your animal because that's okay with the pop art style. And then I'll probably put just a couple like that, just because I like the movement. So if I zoom out all the way as far as what you can see there, this is what it looks like so far on mine. Now I'm still missing all of the other placement of everything else, and I'm probably going to change it up a little bit over here, but that's okay. I'm just trying to get, like I said, the movement of the fur. If you want to come and just like exaggerate the the little areas that do this. I can kind of make a little point. If you want to change your brush and get something that's a little bit smaller to control those points on this, just because you're like, well, I know I like the way that looks and I like that clean look. It's hard for me to get that shape with the brush that I'm using because it's too thick, then switch brushes. Okay, you can always go in between here or there with the brushes. Now that I kind of have that, I'm gonna do also the highlights and so forth for the jawline. You can see that she does have some black in here. So I'm gonna clean my brush first because I'm actually gonna switch my brush to a smaller brush at this time. And remember, this is just the first layer that we're working with. We're not doing the final layer yet. We're just adding the colors. But before I start playing with the black, which is the last color in these areas, I need to make sure that since I'm working with the blue and the purple, that I apply those first. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing for the mouth here. And then at this point, Ashton, do you mind getting that for me, please? At this point, what I'm going to end up doing is I am going to start with the highlights and the shadows and the midtones and so forth with the mouth. So I'm gonna switch brush. You see, I switched to a smaller brush. So at this point, what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna take this small, it's not too big, it's not too small, this brush particular. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add the highlights first. Yes, there is highlights. If I were to zoom in on this and you guys see, especially with dog mouths, you know how they're very wet and so forth, even the nose. If you want to go back and add more, you can. It's all of those, Marcos, if you want. So it's everything that's there is what's going to be donated. Yeah. Yes, sir. You're welcome. So what I'll do is I'm going to apply the same way that I did for the fur. I'm going to do this for all of the bottom as well. Marcos, if you want to leave that open, there's a wood piece right here on this little door. All I do is when I open it up, I stick it right in between the door and it'll hold it open. Yeah, there you go. That way it holds, yeah. So let's start with the blue first. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick up the blue. I'm gonna pay attention to where those super bright highlights are. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm making sure, of course, that my fingers are clean because I do have some paint over here, but it's already dry. So I'll hold my pinky like that so that way I can control it without touching the paint on the bottom. And then I'm gonna apply the blue wherever I see my highlight. I am just touching it. So I'm just putting like if it were pointillism almost. And I'm just going to just put a little bit more here because I see highlight there. I see highlight here. And then if I come over here, I see more highlight right here on this side. And then a little bit here. And then I do see some over here on this side. So again, you're applying the blue in the case of mine because that's my highlight color. And I am placing it where I see the brightest point. So I'm just touching it. And then I'll put a little bit right here. So wherever you see it, that's where I'm basically touching. Now, technically this is dark blue, but like I said, this is the first layer. We're gonna add more layers on top of this, and that's what's gonna give it the effect of that super intense tone, the high contrast colors, which is what makes pop art, okay? So because I have this already ready to go, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to clean off my brush a little bit. I'm not gonna clean it 100%, can I? Yes, but what's the point if I'm gonna be just touching the purple that's similar in tone and I actually use that same blue to mix to the purple. So as long as you take the majority off of it, that's good. And then again, I'm looking at the midtones. So like, for instance, if I zoom in a little bit closer, you can see that right here. So you have highlight and then you have midtone. That's how you determine what is what on your animals. So I'm gonna go ahead and just apply where I see the midtone. I'm putting the purple, okay? So purple here. I also have it here, putting more purple. And then I also have this right here, more purple. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just take this all the way up here. And then that should be good for that. Okay, so if I'm looking over here, there's still some more on this section. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint all of this purple actually, because the majority of it is, I don't really see black. I'm only gonna put black on the parts that are solid black. And the same thing for over here on this side. I need to put just a little tiny bit. This is the tongue. So that shape right there is the tongue that's up here, but I do see some of that on that area. And if you do see a little bit of black, like I see maybe just a little bit, it's better just to cover the whole thing with purple or your mid-tone, whatever you're doing for the mid-tone, and then come back and touch those little areas with black. If it's a minimal amount of black, there's no point of leaving that white section because the black is the darkest color anyways, okay? That's why it's better to work from highlight to the darkest tone. So that way you can always go over it. I could probably put just a tiny bit here because I do see a little bit of a mid-tone here. And then maybe I might even bring this all the way up to here. So if you notice, like I do notice some other mid-tones over here on the nose, but my brush was too big to even get in there. So if you notice any other little spots at this time, especially those of you guys that switched brushes, if you notice any other spots that could use other little areas touched up, just because you're working with those particular brush size, then go ahead and put it in those particular areas that you might have missed before. Okay. So on this, there is some parts of the eyes that could also use some of the color, but I'm going to wait for that. I'm not going to do the eyes just yet. Right now, I'm concentrating solely on the fur. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean my brush here. And then I'm going to clean also with water to make sure that it does get completely cleaned. And now I'm going to look at the brown. So even before I do the black, I want to make sure that I get a second color at least by today. So try to work on at least 2 parts today, just to be on the safe side, just to make sure that you get more of it done. Because like I said, we're going to come back next time and apply the next layer on this. And so the more you do, the better. Okay. My brown area is so minimal, just a little tiny bit, that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get it done already before I do the black. So I'm going to stick to the same, actually, you know what? I'll go back to this one just because I want to keep the fur looking all the same. And for the brown, so if we're looking at the brown here, I'm probably going to use yellows and oranges. So I'm going to leave the white as my highlight. Then I'm going to use my yellow as my midtone. So wherever I see the midtone, which would be like this part here. So I'm going to add the strokes in the direction of the fur that I have. So I'm going to do this and then put some right here. And then same thing for down here. If you notice down here on the bottom, this little shadow work, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the yellow to get this particular area. Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. So I'm going to go ahead and leave a little bit here because of the shadow. I'm going to get more yellow, and you can already see the contrast between that blue and that yellow. That's why I know I wanted to use for sure these particular colors. So I'm going to scoot this in a little bit. So if you're working with brown, you can use yellow, you can use orange, you can also use red as well. And then you can put brown too. You know, just because it might not be as bright of a color doesn't mean you can't use it. So yes, you can, if you choose to. So same thing, it's kind of hard to show you, well, maybe I can hold it at the same time. So how she has brown right here, I'm going to make sure that I also include a little bit of the yellow for the mid-tone. So I'll put a little bit here down on the bottom of the face. And again, if you're watching this and you're like, I don't know what color to use. I mean, as soon as the video is over, you can ask, or if you guys want to ask right now, go for it. Like if you don't mind being on the recording, you can ask. And then same thing for down here on the bottom, because she has some, like right here, this little shadow work, I'm going to use the yellow. I will be putting a little bit of orange in there. I just want to make sure that I get a little bit of yellow in the spots first. So I'll put a little bit of yellow here. She's got a little bit of shading here. So wherever I see the little shadows within the white, technically, because it's kind of like the white mixed into the brown, I'm just going to put where I see the shadow work. This one can actually come, because it goes like, if you pay attention to it, it comes all the way down here to this part of the mouth. So I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. And then I can probably put just a tiny bit right here, right on the bottom. this I might add a little bit more. I'm gonna put orange, like I said, on top of this, but I just wanna make sure that I create the little shadow effect. Now that I kind of have this, because that's like, oh, and also I already forgot, I always forget that she has like her little eyebrows. I wanna make sure that I incorporate some of that color into there as well. So I'm gonna put some right here, getting close to the edge here, and a little bit towards the edge out this way. Same thing for this one. I'm gonna put a little bit here, even though I am gonna go over it with the orange, and it's gonna look a lot different once I place the black where I'm gonna place it right now. That's where it'll really pop. So I'm just gonna put a little bit where I see in those small little areas, and I'm gonna extend this one just a little bit more because I think it does go a little darker here. So the only other place that I could say if I'm gonna add this would be down here on the bottom, but I'm not mixing this yellow. This is my yellow that came out straight out of the can. So if I feel like, well, I'm not 100% sure because I'm still gonna kind of change some of this, the way this looks, then don't add it, leave it alone. You can always come back to it. I can add a tiny little bit, but like I said, if you're using specific colors and you're not sure with those spots, just leave them alone for right now and you can always come back and add. Since I'm not mixing this yellow, so it doesn't matter if it dries or not because I have more of it, okay? So I'm gonna start with the black now. That'll be the last one that I add for that layer for this area. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to, again, clean my brush out, make sure that I wash it out really good because I don't want that yellow to mix with the black, and this is the brush that I'm gonna use. So I'm gonna clean it as best as I can, make sure that you get all that color out. I do not have black on my palette, so I am gonna go ahead and put some black on there. And then let me go ahead and come back to here so you can see what I'm doing. So now that I'm gonna start with the black, now this is where I'm gonna pay attention the most because I told you guys that when you're doing your contours, that's the most important thing when it comes to doing the painting. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to make sure that I cover my brush as best as possible. And then now I'm gonna concentrate on those areas, the darkest spots. So now if I pay attention to this, if I zoom in, guys, you're gonna notice that that bright colored of the blue actually goes on top. So this is why we're doing this layer by layer. So we can figure out the areas first. So I'm gonna do the black, trying to avoid the same way that I did the other one, trying to avoid the little areas that I see the most. And if I cover them, it's okay because I'm gonna come back with the light blue on top of this on the other layer anyways, okay? So I'm just gonna try my best to stick to those areas, following the same direction. So if I wanna go opposite, because I feel like it's easier to control going inward into that blue, so be it. So whichever way is more comfortable for you. But now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put the black on top of where I see it the darkest on my reference picture. So I'm gonna make sure that I lift as I go to the outside because it's my contour that I have to be very careful with. So again, black, and I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna start where I know I have the darkest tone in the direction that should go in those areas. I'm gonna take it opposite into the blue just so I can kind of get some of that texture in there. And I'm gonna put more this way. I'm leaving a little space of white right here because she has this. I'm gonna go back when I do the last layer, then I will go back and I will add just a little tiny bit of color in there, okay? I actually forgot some purple here, so I can go back and add some purple. That's gonna be this little hint of tone right here. So I'll just leave that alone and I'll come back with the purple and I can add it if I notice that I've missed any areas. So now I'm gonna concentrate really hard on making sure that I take this and where it points out to the outside is where I have to be very careful to make sure that and if you're struggling with this type of brush and you need an actual brush that has more of a point to it, like a thinner, smaller brush, then go ahead. I'm just trying to use this brush because I know that it's gonna fill my areas a lot faster because of the size of brush that it is. So her hair does this, and then it kind of curves a little bit towards the outside. So I do want to make sure that I am as careful as possible when I reach that edge, because it curves like this, and then it curves like that. So follow those strokes. It's very important for you to stick to the direction that their fur is moving in order for it to look like them. And we're not in a rush, guys. Like, I would rather, like, I know sometimes the kids have told me in the past, ma'am, it's because you work fast. You don't have to be right where I'm at. Just listen to how I'm going. And if you only have this much painted right now, that's okay. Like, you can work on it either after hours if you for sure really want to get to that spot. And if you're just one of those that works slower and you don't paint fast, then just take a picture of it as soon as we get out of here. You know, as soon as we're done, send it to me on Remind. That's your documentation that you worked with me during the actual class period. And if you don't finish, you just upload what you do have, and I will give you credit for that, okay? I'd rather you guys work slower and do a good job and really concentrate, and it's because you actually like it, and you can always finish it later on your own, now knowing how to do the actual process of it, and you end up with a good piece. Like, I get real happy when the kids love it and they want to be able to take it home and so forth, for them to be able to appreciate a piece that they actually did, okay? So just take your time with it. Did you, I didn't see anything, no. Maybe you left them in the car, maybe? So just as FYI, guys, I just want to make sure that you take your time on it, okay? Now, these are going to go up, so I want to follow the direction that I see the fur in the end. I'm going to take my time and just follow what I see. Remember, I'm going to be going back where the light blue is. I'm going to be adding strokes of the light blue in there. And the same thing down here. I got to add a stroke that does this and comes up. And then I'm just going to pay attention to all of the spots. So like, I can still go back and clean up some of the little points on there, but I'm going to leave it like that for now because this is the first layer. On the second and third layer, if I want to add that, I can. Now I do need to come back, and I'm going to move this just this way because you can kind of tell just by looking at it. And now I'm going to start looking at where are my darkest points here and do the same thing that I did earlier with the midtones and so forth. And I'm just going to add where I see that black. So for sure, she's got black here. You can see a little bit also going in this direction. Now, if you see things like that, like if I lift it, you can kind of see a little bit better. Do you see how I left some of the midtones there? That's because I noticed a few little areas that stayed. So I'm not going to cover all of it. I'm just going to put it where I actually notice that dark tone. Same thing for right here on the bottom of the eye. So I noticed that it's got the black right here. This is the darkest spot. And then there's a little bit that come like this. I want to make sure that I get that black in there. And then also right here, if you notice that dark tone right there, I want to leave mid-tone, but I do want to see some of the black really here more closer to the top. So I'm going to add a little bit. Look, if I lift it, you can kind of see it there. And on Monday, when I see you guys again, I will be adding more layer to this. This is not the final look. We're still going to go back and add some more strokes on those particular highlights. Right now, we're just putting the first coat, okay? So I didn't originally put any purple in here because this is all black if you look at it. So I just kind of put the purple going into it, but now I'm going to apply the black where I see it. So all of this should be black. So I'm taking the strokes up because that's the direction that she has it. This is why I told you guys, it looks a little funny right now because I don't have all of the sections done. Because some of that is purple. So I'm just going in now and applying the darkest spots. She has a little bit right here under that eyebrow. I call it an eyebrow, but it's like they're little markings, but it looks like a little eyebrow. So I'm gonna come here. She's got some black here. Remember to go in the direction you see it. So if it's going in this direction, you gotta put it in that direction. This is black here. So I'm gonna add it there. Once I have that, so let me scoot this over. And when we start getting their noses, guys, that's where it's really gonna look like that, okay? Let me come here. I'm gonna get more black. And now I'm gonna pay attention to the spots that fall right here under her eyes. So this is all black here. She does have a few little strokes right here, so I'm just gonna put them more as strokes. And then just a tiny bit right here. And then of course her nose, well, the majority of that part is black, so I will be adding the black in that area too. The nose, because it's a different texture, I am going to add it by just hitting it kind of like pointillism. So all of this is black. All of this is black. I did miss a highlight that comes right here in the middle. So I'm gonna leave that alone. I'll leave it white for right now, and then I can always come back with the blue for the highlight. So this is black. All of this is black. The bottom of this part of the nose is black. And see, right now you guys see it with the glare on camera, but if I lift it, you're gonna see that it does look very different, okay? So I'm just paying attention to wherever I have the black on her. See right here, she's got black here on the bottom. This is where I missed the highlight. It should have like a little highlight right here down on the bottom part. And then actually this right here should be some blue. So I'm gonna leave that alone because that's part of the highlight part. And then if I come to the hair over here, I should have a little bit of black here as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a few strokes. I like that purple color that's coming through, so I don't wanna cover it completely. And if I, again, because of the glare, you don't really see it right. But if I show you, you can kind of see that I'm just putting some strokes on top. I'm leaving some of that under color come through because I really like the way it came out, okay? So I'm gonna do the same thing to the ones down here on the bottom. So all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna come and I'm just gonna make sure that I enhance some of these strokes, not covering the purple because I like the way the purple looked. But technically it is black fur. So I wanna make sure that I show at least a little bit of it, as well as in this one too. So I'm just gonna put a few little strokes. Remember, guys, this is only the first layer. So if you're like, I like it, but I don't like the tone, you can always come back and put in those highlights that I'm going to show you how to do and brighten it up and so forth like that with those particular tones. Okay, we're not putting black or using it for the other areas because that's not the black fur. So I want to make sure that it has a different consistency where the brown and the white is. Okay. We still need to add the black in the mouth. So I want to make sure that I clean my brush so that it doesn't dry on me. I'm going to clean my brush really good. And then I'm going to move to the smaller brush that I was using earlier. So that way I can get the black. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. And again, you can't see the picture. Well, maybe if I scoot it over just a little bit so you can kind of see it. But if I zoom in, I'm not looking at the glare because I know the glare from the top. I'm seeing if I can cover it. Yeah, I'll put my hand there just for a little bit so you guys can kind of see. But you can see that wherever there's black, I have to now go and add black. So I'll put black pretty much everywhere where there's not teeth and color already. So I'm just gonna avoid those areas, work around it, make sure that I incorporate the black on all the rest. So I'm gonna not put my arm just so I can actually concentrate over here, but you guys already saw the reference more or less. Okay, and then I'm gonna put, so I'm just going around my teeth. And then of course, not covering the blue and the purple that I put. Now it's still lacking some, I'm still lacking some of the white highlight and all that, but that's gonna be one of the last layers that we apply. We're not there yet. Right now we're putting the bottom coat. I'm getting more black. So I'm doing this. And then I'm putting this little area right here. So wherever you guys see the black, you're gonna apply the paint. Maybe like the sun or something. Yeah, that looks good. And then I have a little bit of black right here that I'm gonna put. So you're just taking your time, make sure that you apply it right. Like I said, there's still gonna be some highlights and stuff that we're gonna apply, but go back and forth. The good thing about acrylic, guys, is that if it doesn't come out 100%, then you can always go back and fix it. You can always say, no, I don't like that. That looks a little bit off. That looks a little bit wrong. This part came out too thick. Or just add some more of the other paint to make it look a little bit more with the highlight, okay? So it doesn't have to be precise, because we're gonna go back, like I said, and add other tones in between. See, like this one for sure has space. All these teeth need to have the space in between. So I'm not even defining them yet, which means that we have to make sure that we go back and be very precise as you can. With the sizes of brush you have to think about that too. If your brushes are too big, it's gonna be harder to do the details. So, you know, whatever you can do with the stuff that you have available for you, okay? Remember, as long as you guys are attempting, as long as you guys are trying, I'm gonna help you guys out with the grade. And again, this is not finished. This is just the first layer. I have not yet gone over about the colors for the eyes. We haven't even put like the tongue in, which is gonna make this particular, once I put the eyes and the tongue, then you'll be like, okay, I see it. Like even now you can kind of see some of it going on. But the moment that we start putting the little highlights, the moments that we start putting the outline where they belong, the moment that we start emphasizing, like I haven't even done like the white fur yet. So when I add the white fur, it's just gonna look that much better, okay? This is just the first layer. This is where I want you guys to be. So pick at least 2 of the colors to apply the midtones. Now, for me, and I'm gonna do this before next time. So next time you see this, it's gonna have a little bit of that orangey color on her brown. And I might add a little bit, a hint of red, but it's just gonna be so tiny. It probably is gonna be so minute, you won't be able to tell. It's gonna look more orange if anything, okay? So I'm gonna stop the video there because this is as far as you should go. And it kind of explains about the highlights, midtones, and the shadows, okay? So let me just stop it.